Welcome to today's Hinckley Forum. My name is Rory Stewart. The Hinckley Institute of Politics is a nonpartisan institute at the University of Utah. The Hinckley provides an array of transformative experiences for seek to foster public discourse and civil debate on the most current and pressing issues, bringing in local, national, and international thought leaders. Today's forum is presented in partnership with the Kem-C Gardner Policy Institute. Now we are excited to introduce today's guest, Tim Shriver. At this polarized moment in U.S. politics, the University of Utah and Project Unite have joined forces to make political and public discourse more productive. Unite was founded in 2018 by CEO Tim Shriver in an effort to help ease divisions, prevent violence, and solve problems. In 2021, in partnership with the Hinckley Institute, the nonprofit developed the Dignity Index, an 8-point scale that measures how people talk to each other when they disagree, ranging from 1, which shows total contempt for the other side, to 8, which shows dignity to everyone, no matter what. Tim Shriver is married, a father of 5, the chairman of Special Olympics International, co-creator of the Dignity Index, and co-founder of Unite. Tim began his career as an educator and co-founded and currently chairs the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. He earned his undergraduate degree from Yale University, a master's degree from Catholic University, and a doctorate in education from the University of Connecticut. And has produced 6 films, is the author of the New York Times bestseller, Fully Alive, Discovering What Matters Most, and co-editor of The Call to Unite, Voices of Hope and Awakening. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Shriver to our campus.
Thank you very much. Thanks everybody for coming today. Got food, got pizza, nice. Feel free to get seconds, don't be polite. I know free pizza is a good thing. I'm very grateful to be here, very grateful that you all took some time to come. No homework from this event, so that's the good news. Bad news is I'm going to try to make you work a little bit when we get into talking about what the solutions to some of our most challenging issues are. I'm grateful to be what's called a public impact scholar at the University of Utah. You say, well, what is a public impact scholar? A public impact scholar, as far as I can tell, is someone who the university invites to come in here to try to communicate what goes on at the university in a way that will have impact beyond the university. But it's also an invitation, at least to me, to feel like I can bring ideas to the student body here and work them over. Like, what would it mean to take these ideas and produce some public impact? So in many respects, I see this as an opportunity to do what the old expression would be called sausage making, right? This is not the presentation of a finished theory. This is a presentation of a work in progress. And so you're as much, I hope, respondents and architects and critics as you are listeners or students of the work. So you're getting now a version of this, but let me start with just a quick, so here's a kind of a goofy looking picture of me, but it was taken about a year ago when I was getting ready to launch this podcast called Need a Lift, and I was at this coffee shop. A friend of mine was taking the picture, and a guy comes in after we're done and says, Tim, did anyone ever, a guy had a big cowboy hat and cowboy boots and big silver belt buckle and jeans, and said, anyone ever tell you you look like a Kennedy? And I sort of chuckled a little bit to myself because I'm related to many people who I guess look a little bit like me and carry that last name. And I said, yes, I'd heard that before. And he said, well, that must really piss you off, eh? And what he was kind of saying was, the way you look, I associate with a particular point of view that I think is undesirable, right? So how many times has anyone looked at you and assumed that because of the way you're dressed or the color of your skin or the type of hair or the clothes you're wearing or the place you come from or the parents you grew up with, or the hat you're wearing, that because of you, the way you look, I know who you are. I know what you must be about, right? And the reason I wanted to start with that is because I do believe that at this time in our country, and maybe in your lives as students and on campus, we're dealing with a lot of people getting each other wrong. A lot of judgment that's not accurate. And sometimes that getting each other wrong could be at your kitchen table. Sometimes it's with your roommate. Sometimes it's with somebody in your family. Sometimes it's with somebody of a political party that you don't agree with. And you see the picture, or you hear the quote, or you see the post, and you think that's what kind of, oh, I know what kind of person they are. Those people, right? We jump very quickly from a broad perception, something as simple, in my case, as a haircut or a jawline, and I know who you are. I know what you think. I know where you come from. And in most cases, a lot of life is unlearning assumptions that we made about people that were wrong. So I want to talk a little bit today about why I think that's happening. This is my fellow public impact scholar here at the university, Arthur Brooks. And he's writing about what he calls the culture of outrage and contempt. He uses the word contempt, an addiction. Now, I'm guessing everyone in this room knows someone who's struggled with addiction. Maybe some of you in the room have struggled with addiction, dependence on something. Who knows what it could be? But we know how addiction can take over. You know, it can lead to a visceral need to have a substance, to get it every day. It can cost you if you're a gambler, your job, your house, your family, alcohol, drugs, other things. There's a sense in which an addiction takes over and robs you of your capacity to decide for yourself. I wish I didn't want to drink, but I do. Right? There's a sense in which an addiction actually tells you something about yourself that you don't even want, but you're stuck. And I want to invite you to think for a minute about a way in which you're thinking right now that may be being aided and abetted by a complex of forces that are trying to make you think a certain way. What do I mean by that? I like to think that there's a three-part relationship in our culture between the algorithm on social. How many people have looked at social today? Yeah, everybody, or almost everybody, right? So you're looking at social. That algorithm is fueled in part by partisan news, by news entities that are designed by their structure to give you one version of the news. And they're on both the right and the left. So you have partisan news, the algorithm, and then you have politics. And they all depend at some level on each other. The politician is thinking to herself or himself, I need to get likes on my page to get votes. And so the politician says to her communications, what should I post? Should I post something about my opponent that congratulates? No, don't post that. Don't post that. You should call your opponent a malevolent jerk. We'll get hits like you can't believe. And I'll send that to your biggest donor. And it'll show all the likes. And your biggest donor will write a check because you're really taking it to the other side. And then what's going to happen is you're going to get covered by MSNBC or Fox. And you're going to get invited to come on tonight on this is the most watched show. And what's the guy doing the producing at MSNBC or Fox saying? That producer's saying, we got to cover this because he really gave it to her. Or she really gave it to him. And so the algorithm is saying, oh, this got a lot of likes, so therefore send more people there because likes are money. When you like, when you watch, when you scroll, when you click, you pay. I don't know if you know that. I assume you do. Every time you click on something, you're paying for it. So if you're clicking on things that you think are horrible, you just paid for what you think is horrible. Because that's how the algorithm works. That's how Facebook or whatever, X or all these other things make money. They make money by people clicking on things. That's how they sell advertising. That's how they make a profit. So there's this whole nested system, and its primary feed is to make you angry. So if you woke up this morning, look, this is, well, let's just look at this slide. This is, you guys all know this. Let's see if I can make this work. This is just a, how many people saw a post that was something like this today? Be honest. If you saw anything that's, yeah, okay, right, okay. Today, right? Not this week, not this month, not this year, today. So I showed this at high school down the street, this slide, about 4 months ago. Like 700 kids, 9 through 12, the whole school was in the auditorium. And everybody laughed. Like there was a murmur of laughter when I showed this same set of clips. And I was like, wow, normally people don't laugh at this. Normally people are like, oh, that's gross, that's terrible, I can't believe you showed that. And I sort of said, laughing, why? And one kid, like sort of right where you're sitting, said, why? I said, why are you guys laughing? He said, because it's funny. Because it's funny. So conditioned that this is normal to think it's entertaining, right? And so if you saw this morning, as many of you did, you're being targeted to buy into the idea that these horrible people are trying to destroy your country. You're not being told the full story you're being told the worst story. So if you go to bed tonight or you go back home tonight and you need to check again, you know why you're checking again? Because you need to see it again. Because it's like an addiction. Because the more threatened you are by the horrible people out there, the more you need to know that someone's on your side humiliating them. And the more you find out that someone's on your side humiliating them, the better you feel. And you can rest because at least I've got my team and they're really attacking and they're really fighting and they're really humiliating and dehumanizing the other side. So as I said earlier today, when we started on this work, a major newspaper editor I was talking about, well, what could we do to counter this? We're going to work on trying to counter this. And he said, well, good luck. You're up against a $2 trillion business. So this is a $2 trillion business is trying. I was talking to the guy who started Pinterest 2 weeks ago. And he said the goal of most of the social media is to colonize your mind. Never heard that expression before. To colonize your mind. So it's not like the old colonization stories. This is to try to get inside of you and control how you think. That's the business that they're in. Now, some of it's entertaining, some of it's funny, some of it allows you to connect with your cousins, and some of it allows us to celebrate our birthdays or great milestones in life. Some of it allows us to trumpet the things we think are most important, to share our opinions. But there's another side to this. So let's see. Keep losing my signal. Let's see. Nope. I need a password for Nick. Nick? Password is incorrect. Okay. If you can tell Nick. So let me pause there and just see questions, comments. Does this resonate at all? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious, in your view, like to what extent these assumptions you open talking about can be useful in protecting, as like a protective force for the self or communities.
Say a little bit more what you mean by protective force.
So like maybe not a group of immigrants being open and not assuming they'll be threatened by extremists or like white supremacists.
So meaning like if we have this kind of attack, let's say, against white supremacists, an immigrant will feel protected? Is that what you mean?
Making a safe assumption or an assumption to be safe.
Oh, I see. Like, is this a way to protect yourself from risk? Oh, I see, I see. Good question. So I think, we do have, our brains are protective. If we see danger, we move. Like, you see some eyes in the woods over there, you run, right? You don't wait to find out if it's a kitty cat or a leopard. You assume it's a leopard and you run. I think there is the dimension of some of this that creates a warning system for people that reminds them that they need to remove themselves from this. What's not so clear is whether or not counterattacking is in the interest of their safety, or at least counterattacking using the same language. So I think you're right. If people feel like there's a risk on the campus, I don't say let's use dignity if we get an active shooter alert. Right, let's wait and have a conversation. No, an active shooter alert means there's real present danger. Lock the door. Put yourself in a safe position. The assumption, though, that when we feel some degree of risk, that means both escape and counterattack is, I think, where the challenging space is. Does that make sense? Yeah. Any other quick comments on this? Okay, so here's just an example. Oh, yes, sir.
So, are you talking about, I guess, you might get into this a little bit later. So, I understand that it's a business and it's easier to control people, and not only just to control the population, but in what we purchase and what we buy and what we look at. It's basically creating a prison of the mind versus a prison of the body, which somebody commits a crime.
Right.
Is that kind of what you're...
Strong language. I've never heard it said that way, but I think that makes some sense. I mean, prison, there's a sense in which there are forces trying to manipulate the way you think about me and me think about you. That's now, is it prison-like when it overtakes you? Yes. But I would say that there's some risk of that. I wouldn't say everybody's in a prison. We still have free will and individual rights in this country, but I think there's some risk that we all of us, without knowing it, have become consumed by fear and hostility towards others. That's almost like a prison. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What I would say is that you may not even know that you're in a prison if that you're not aware of questioning these things.
Exactly.
That's kind of what I was curious about.
That's what I'm leading in. I'm leading into that we're not aware of how much we're being influenced, that how we're trying to, in effect, decolonize. Kara Swisher and Matt Taibbi, these are one of this relatively recent. Matt Taibbi's quite an older quote, but these are kind of whistleblower type pieces by journalists. Kara Swisher writes, even if it wasn't their intention, tech companies became key players in killing our comedy. You could say imprisoning us by a kind of a politics or a government or social, but seeding isolation, outrage, and addictive behavior. So you can see this is not my language, it's hers and Matt Taibbi. But there are hundreds of stories like this. These are just ones I put on the screen just to kind of make the point. It doesn't mean you're not free. You can put down your social media, you can find other sources of news. But it does mean that we should be cautious that if we are really depending on MSNBC to remind us of what's really going on in the country, or Fox, or X, you're in the grasp of a business who is vested in trying to make you partisan and to some extent isolated, outraged, and addicted. So let's move on. I want to see if I can make this is a fun clip from our friend Van Jones. Let's see if we can make it work. Nope, I got no sound. Hold on. Was Nick still around? Let's see if Nick can give us sound. I don't know. Can we get sound, Nick? If we can't, we can move on. But it's just kind of, I think it's a pretty cool clip.
Your neighbor for voting for Donald Trump. They're not seeing the same thing on their feed that you're seeing on your feed. Like I said before, when they wake up in the morning, they look at their phone, they see they're in a different movie with different bad guys, different good guys, scary music where your music is happy music where your music is scary. So you gotta love them. You gotta love them. And by the way, everything in your feed ain't right either. Everything in your feed is not correct, ma'am, sir. It's like, my feed is the truth. Your feed is a bubble. How likely would that be? that everything in your feed is correct, and everybody else is getting tricked. We're all getting tricked. We're all getting used. We're all getting lied to. We're all getting propagandized. Me, you, and everybody else. And so we need each other. We need each other.
So, he said it quicker and better than I
You have
did.
your name.
Oh, no, not again. So why would we care about this? Your generation in particular is, I think, in the throes of reckoning with what this means for your lives. Most Americans think we're stuck, that we can't solve problems. Only 4% of us think the country's working well. A third of us, that's what, about 100, 110 million of us have ended a relationship with someone that we were friends with or loved or in our own families. 100 million of us, when it comes to Thanksgiving, won't have our uncles or our cousins at dinner anymore because they voted for this or they voted for that, or because they don't understand my position on this or my position on that. Most of us feel that the country is split and divided and unable to move forward. And so simple data about anxiety, when people say, well, why do you think there's so much mental health challenges in young people? And there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think one of the reasons is if I were 16 or 18 or 22, your guys' age, and I was looking at a country that was so hopelessly angry and hostile, I'd be like, I don't think this is going to work. And if I was thinking to myself, half the country is dangerous, I'd be thinking to myself, I better stick to my own group. Yeah, it might be lonely, but I'm not getting out there. And if I was looking at this data and I was your age, I'd be pessimistic about my future. So this quality of contempt has a toll on our politics, but also on our mental health, in my view. And this data, you could put 100 pieces of data like this that support the same premise. So here's what, enough about problems. You've got in front of you a version of what we think is a way in which you have agency to make a difference. When you ask Americans, do you think we're headed in the right direction? 80+% say no. When you ask them, do you know what you can do about it? 80+% say no, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So that's why many people just withdraw into their own work. Say, I don't know what I can do, so I'll just be in my own little world. Here's our version of what you can do. We had yesterday here in Salt Lake City, Donna Hicks, who has worked in South Africa and Estonia, the Balkans, Northern Ireland, in places where there's been deep conflict that's been violent and resulted in war, and she's been an expert in trying to figure out what can counter that level of anger and hostility after violence. And she says that the only way you can do that, the most primal instinct all of us has, is the desire to be treated with dignity. And some people would say the desire to be seen, the desire to be safe, the desire to be valued, the desire to be treated with respect. Donna has discerned this into the idea that everybody has within you, inviolably, no exceptions. You didn't earn it. By getting into the University of Utah, you didn't get more of it. If you hadn't gotten in, you wouldn't have less of it. You have dignity. Richard Rohr, writing from a more spiritual perspective, suggests that at this moment in the planet's evolution, we either find a way to see everybody as having an original goodness and a universally shared dignity, or we don't make it. So our view is that in this $2 trillion addictive business, we want to create a counterculture. We want people to see an option to opt out and to opt into a different way of addressing your principles and your values. So we built this funky little scale, and I'm going to just spend a minute on it, and then we'll open it up for some conversation. The scale you have in front of you was normed and validated by University of Utah scholars and students 2.5 years ago, when we came here with this idea that dignity was important, and we came here with an idea that maybe if we showed people how it worked, we could help and excite people about using more of it. Less contempt, more dignity. So on the scale, and you can follow along in the card you have, from 4 down is increasing levels of contempt. And this is speech. So a 4 is the kind of person that says, our group is just better than those people. They're not one of us. We're Utah, they're Brigham Young. We're the better university, right? Of course. That's 4. 3 gets a little more thorny. 3 is like we're the good people, they're not the good people. It's us versus them. This state's not big enough for both universities. We really should make sure that they don't get funded because we need the funding. And if they get funding, we lose. If we get funding, they lose. Let's beat them. That's 3 language. I don't know why I got off on Brigham Young versus the University of Utah, but I'll switch metaphors in a second. 2 drops down to they're evil. It's not us versus them. It's us or them. See a lot of this in politics. This country's not big enough for those people. Yeah, I love my country, but I hate them. Right? That's 2 language. They come from a bad place. They have bad intentions. We've got to stop them. It's time they get destroyed. 1 goes to the next level, which is violence. They're not even human. Sorry, they're not human. It's time. We got to crush them, destroy them, remove them. So these are language models. And you maybe can hear in yourself, we'll get to this in a second, but 5 and up is what we call the dignity side of the scale. A 5 person is the kind of person who's like, I know you and I don't agree, yeah, but here, I got 10 minutes, you get 10 minutes. Like I'm all in favor of dignity, you're not, so now you get, equal time. I'll listen. You deserve the chance to be heard. That's a kind of 5 language. Sometimes you do this with your best friends or your siblings. Okay, I know, you're wrong, but you get, I'm going to give you a chance. There's a little bit of less contempt. I'm not better than you, right? So you're starting to hear the contempt bleeding out of the language. And at a 5, you're sort of good. You're a good listener. At a 6, you go a little bit more. You're curious. We don't agree. Let's talk. I bet there's some part of this we could agree on. I want to hear more about your story, more about your background. Maybe we don't agree on this, but we might agree on that. Good. Do I need a password again? No, please don't. 7, I would call the telltale sign of a 7 humility. A 7 is a person who enters the conversation with a disagreement with a certain openness that they might have something to learn, that they might be wrong. They often will start the sentence, I might be wrong, but here's what I think. And when you hear people say, I might be wrong, and they mean it, not I might be wrong, but you're a fool. If you hear I might be wrong, that's 7. That's almost invariably a 7. And an 8 is a person who, notwithstanding however deep or passionate the disagreement, is the kind of person who says you deserve dignity no matter what. So we built this tool with the hope of awakening people to how they could see their politicians or their professors or their parents and be able to say, hey, Mom, you keep saying that to me. That's like 3 language, or Dad or Uncle Joe, whatever it is. And but what we found pretty early on, so we gave this to a bunch of students here, and then when we took this out. So here's a quick quiz. I told you you're going to have to work a little bit. First quote from Simone Biles. This is her at the Olympics in Paris. I guess it's 2 years ago now. I think it's all about sportsmanship. She and her fellow competitors kind of bowed to the gold medal winner who they'd lost to. It's all about sportsmanship. We don't care whether we win or lose. We're always going to keep a good face and support competitors because they've worked just as hard as we have for that moment. You have to give them their flowers, and that's exactly what me and Jordan were doing on the Olympic stand. Okay, so look at your scorecards. You're now young, early stage experts in the Dignity Index. You've gotten your overview. How would you? Where would you place this? I hear 6. We're going to go quickly. 6 is right. You can hear in Simone Biles that she's in the same game that her competitor is in. And she respects her. She's looking for that. They have common ground. They're both dedicated to winning. They're both tough gymnasts. They both have tried very hard. So she's not saying she wishes her competitor had won, but she's saying, I respect you. We have something in common. We're both in it together. Here's a different one. Taylor Swift is a psycho. She's the cancer of the music industry. Seriously, never seen such a fame-hungry and stats-obsessed artist in my life. How many of you would click like on that? No, just kidding. How do you score it? 2? Yeah. Anybody else? 2? It's okay to have differences of opinion. 3? Yeah. We would score this one a 3. And the reason we would score it a 3 is that the person is not saying she's evil, not saying that she should be destroyed. They're saying that she's bad energy, right? She's bad for music, she's bad for the arts. So that would be more 3 language. 2 language would require that they'd say that she's not just a cancer, but we should oppose her, we should stop her, we should keep her from being able to perform, she should be defunded. The music industry can't survive with her in it. It's either the art or Taylor Swift, choose which side. That would be kind of more like 2 language. We'll do one more here. I claim to be a simple individual, liable to err like any other fellow mortal. I own, however, that I have humility enough to confess my errors and to retrace my steps. It's unwise to be too sure of one's own wisdom. It's healthy to be reminded that the strongest might weaken and the wisest might err. This is Mahatma Gandhi. What do you give it? You guys are good. This is a 7. The telltale sign in this is I'm open to the fact that I might be wrong. Okay, so first question, which you do not have to answer openly, is the last time you talked about a politician or a political party different from your own. Take a look here and score yourself. This morning, yesterday, at lunch, last night, talking to your friends, when you were talking, the last time you talked about politics or about whoever is on the other side, whether it was a contemporary issue, score yourself. Now, I'm not going to ask you to confess to whatever your score is, unless you would like to, but I will ask you to guess what you think most people score. What do you think the average score when people score themselves on their 3? What else do you think? 3? Yeah. 4? 2. I find unscientifically it's between a 2 and a 3. People scoring themselves, not scoring the other side, scoring themselves. So here's the first aha. We're all in the contempt industrial complex. We're all, almost nobody, and I grew up in a political family. I got to tell you, when I started working on this, I hadn't seen it. I spent my whole life at 2 and 3. Without even knowing it. Of course those people are horrible. Of course they're dangerous. Of course he's trying to destroy the country. That was just the way we talked. And I didn't see it. Because here's the way we think about this. Contempt is hard to see when you use it. Because it hides in disguise. Because all the 2, 3 scoring you just did, I don't know if you scored yourself that level, but if you did it, you're using that language because you think you're morally right. Of course you can say they're destroying the country, because they are destroying the country. You're using the language of contempt because it hides in moral righteousness. Because you're right, you have a right to treat them with contempt, right? So what I want to spend a minute on here is the back of the slide, the back of the card you've got, because the question here is, there's so many questions, which I'm sure many of you are wondering. We'll stop in a minute. But the back of the slide is, in a way, our short-form curriculum for what we need to get out of the contempt industrial complex. Because as one woman said to me, look, before I listened to this, before I saw this, I would have told you I hate hateful people. And I think if I'd asked you before, like if I'd started out by saying, how many people in the room hate hateful people? Don't you think you would have put your hand up? Be honest. Yeah, I mean, I would have. Like if somebody stood up here and said, do you hate hateful people? I said, yeah, of course I hate hateful people. But you don't hear it, right? You wouldn't have said that?
No,
You would have. You wouldn't have?
I mean, yeah, it's just like the contradiction's right in front of you.
It's right in front of you. You can't, but like there's a little blip where you, at least in my case, I was like, yeah, I hate, wait a minute. No, I don't hate. No, wait a second, stop, right? But so there's a synaptic kind of flow towards joining one another in contempt for people who you think of as being contemptuous without realizing we've become what we abhor. So if you say to yourself, let's just assume for a minute we would agree that we don't want to be hating hateful people because we've become hateful. And then how do you stop hateful people if you're hateful, right? You've become a hateful person. So if you want to get out of that trap, here are the skills we suggest. This is a short form. You could put 1,000 skills up here. You could put 1,000 values. How do you create safety for people? How do you acknowledge people? How do you treat people with dignity? But here's a short form version of them. The first, and this is on the back of your slide. So the first one I've mentioned already. The first thing that happens is we think that the first thing we all have to do is recognize that what the index seems to be is a tool for judging Spencer Cox or Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Mike Lee or whoever it is actually a tool that awakens you to yourself. We call this the mirror effect. So if I had one hope, it would be that you looked at this and you saw yourself somewhere and you thought to yourself, damn, I don't want to do that anymore. Because like if you're a 2, remember, if you talk 2 language, some people will hear 1. Right? So if you use 2 language, you're very close to the language of violence. And you may not hear it in yourself, but other people will hear it in you. And most people, not everybody, but most people don't want to be in that zone. They want to oppose things they believe strongly that need opposition. They want to be vehement and strident and strong in their fulfilling their principles, but they don't want to be considered people who are hateful and violent. Most people, not everybody, but most people. So we think of the dignity index as first a chance for us to see ourselves. We've spent a lot of time, don't worry, I won't sing for you today, the Man in the Mirror song, the Michael Jackson song. But here's my favorite clip of the dignity.
Are you smart?
Yeah.
Are you strong?
Yeah.
Are you brave?
Yeah.
Are you pretty?
Yeah.
Are you kind?
Not really.
Okay, this little girl is like a genius at self-awareness, right? She's 3 years old and she's already able to be honest about what she's good at and what she isn't. And she's able, at least in this clip, to admit it, right? So if you're thinking to yourself, I don't want anybody to know that I judge myself a 3, or I certainly don't want to abandon my passions, maybe I want to use 3 language, but I don't know. The alternative, the first step is just to know that you're using it. The first step is to know where you stand. Second step that we see quite a lot is that, as I said to you before, contempt is hard to see. And I hope even in this short time we're together, once you start to see it, it becomes a little less attractive to use it. Contempt is a little bit shamed by dignity. It's a little bit embarrassed by dignity. So I hope that the next step is to start to think about this quote I just shared with you. If you've bragged, like maybe I would admit to having done at some point in my life, bragged about hating hateful people, hopefully that becomes a little bit more aware to you. Third thing is it possible to be an 8? Like, let's be honest, that's kind of like ridiculous, right? So here's one of my favorite 8 moments. This is Pharrell Williams. Rather than me reading it, can I get a volunteer? Will you read? Do you mind reading? Yeah.
I'm telling you, the world is a beautiful place, but it does not work without empathy and inclusion. God is love. This universe is love, and that's the only way it will function. And I get it. Sometimes the divisive stuff works in life. We learned that lesson last year, that sometimes divisiveness works. But you have to choose what side you're on. I'm choosing empathy. I'm choosing inclusion. I'm choosing love for everybody, just trying to lift everyone. Even when I disagree with someone, I'm wishing them the best and hoping for the best because we can't win the other way.
Beautiful. So this is not Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr. or Nelson Mandela or Desmond Tutu or Mother Teresa or this is contemporary pop star music genius. And what I love so much about this quote is, even when I disagree, he's making it clear this is not a campaign to be nice or be a centrist. Our goal in trying to elevate this concept of dignity is not to say, neutralize your principles. Be quiet when someone says something offensive. Don't speak up when you get angry. No, not the case. And you can hear this in Pharrell Williams. Even when I disagree with someone, I'm doing my best to do it in a way that doesn't make things worse. Because when you disagree with contempt, you make an enemy for your cause. When you shame someone with whom you disagree, you almost guarantee they're not going to be won over to your point of view. So if you're passionate about civil rights or about LGBTQ rights or about defunding public education or about building a border wall, whatever it is, if you're passionate about it, the best way to make an enemy for your passion is to attack the humanity of people who you disagree with. And you guarantee you're not going to win them over. Which is counterintuitive. Again, it's counterintuitive because most people will say, if you're passionate, if you're giving them hell, if you're really destroying the other side, you really care, don't you? Well, you may really care, and you may really be counterproductive for your cause. Because the more violent your rhetoric becomes, the less likely you are to win people over. And what I think Pharrell is saying in his own way here is, if you choose, when you disagree, to treat people with empathy and inclusion, you got a better shot. So if all you want to do is move the dialogue in the country on issues you care about, stop people from doing things you don't think are morally acceptable, the worst mistake you can make is to attack their humanity. Attack them personally. And we're back to Van. Okay. So we'll stop with Pharrell, and we just have, I guess, about 10 minutes, and let's open it up. Questions, comments, disagreements. I love it when, yes, sir. Yeah.
I think on the surface, what you said was very nice, but the thousands of years of history conclusively proves that violence and dehumanizing other people brings a lot of success. United States itself was founded on violence. We weren't able to talk to the British Empire, and we reached an impasse. And as a result, we had to take up arms. And another key issue that is very divisive is immigration. So over the last 100 years, since 1922, when Warren Harding was the president, there have been attempts to restrict immigration. And large majorities, you take any poll back from 100 years ago until today, large majority of Americans, they oppose mass immigration. Yet, what the people in power have done is dehumanize those who have opposed mass immigration, and that strategy has worked. So anyone who opposes the wholesale immigration has been labeled as a racist and a bad person, and that you're against humanity and so on. So it completely contradicts what you're saying.
Wait a second, slow down. You just said that the dehumanizing of people was a good thing?
Not a good thing, but it worked.
Is it working right now? The people that oppose immigration, is it working now?
Yes, it is working because
you mean that people that are in favor of open borders are succeeding?
Of course. I mean, you see, both the Republicans and the Democrats, they failed to control the border.
Right.
And this current president, there are lots of things to not like about him, but whatever little effort he has made is encountering ferocious opposition with so many protests, and you can see violence all over.
Right, right.
So it's a big challenge.
Right. Okay. So can I try to summarize? So what I'm hearing you say is violence and contempt work. It can work. I agree with you. It can work. Stalin and Hitler and Mussolini killed 100 million people. It worked.
And so did Roosevelt.
Okay. So you can say wars work sometimes. I would say that's true. Violence can work for people in power when they want to use it to impose their will. There's no question about it. The only
Treating people with dignity is a recent concept which came with the Bill of Rights, where freedom.
well, I don't think, I think the scriptures of the major religions are flush full of dignity language. Stoic philosophers we talked about this morning, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, are flush full of dignity language. The Greeks also, the concept of democracy itself was centered on the concept of human dignity. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily prevailed in statecraft, but I don't think it didn't come from me, that's for sure. I know it's full of violence, but it's also full of the insights about human dignity. Look, my point is not to say one is normal and the other isn't. Trust me, if what you heard me say was hatred, contempt, and violence are somehow not human, no, I'm not saying that. They're very human. They've been used quite a lot in history. I would dispute your premise that they always win. I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that's, for instance, we're talking a lot to business leaders. There's a lot of business leaders who will say, some business leaders are vicious and almost violent with their employees. They dehumanize their employees and they make money. It's true. It's true, they do. The vast majority of business leaders don't lead that way. The ones that do lead that way, especially the ones that are the most successful, get a lot of press. But I just talked to a guy who's got 40,000 employees in his company. He says, look, the only way this company succeeds is if we get the language you're using, because this is the DNA of our company. It's a 150-year-old company. The DNA of our company is that we try to treat our employees and our customers with dignity. So the DNA of another company may be different, and they both may be successful, but you got to choose what side you're on. So violence can work, and contempt can work. There's no question. You saw that in the Farrell quote. We saw contempt can work. But you got to choose what side you're on. Would you choose that for your family when you discipline your children? Would you choose that for a school? If a sixth grader tells you, hey, look, I saw violence works, so I'm going to punch in the nose of the kid that bothers me, you'd say, no, that's not acceptable.
I choose dignity. I'm on the side of dignity.
Yeah.
But the history, the long arc of history shows that violence has always prevailed.
Well, I think that's an empirical question. I don't think that's accurate. I don't think the long arc of history says violence always prevails. I think violence can prevail, but I wouldn't say always. Yes. But I think it's an important challenge, so thank you. Yeah.
Testing. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, I'm in the middle between y'all two, which is, well, now, right, with the influence of social media, I believe. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. With the influence of social media, definitely, and freedom of speech has allowed people to say a lot of things without consequences. And I think that's why violence might be maybe a factor that we can include, right? People say things without consequences, and maybe like a little punch in the nose once in a while, restore balance. But more of a question, that's kind of like between the two arguments right now. But more of a question for you, which is, I understand you're trying to like reach the audience and share the message, but my question is kind of funny, which is how do we reach people such as, for example, Karens, right? I just saw a video yesterday, last week about some discussion in a baseball game, right? And I feel like older people are sometimes the ones that we need to address the most, especially when it comes to the levels 2 and 3. So how can we influence or change those for us being young?
Yeah.
Because they're like, wow, you don't know.
Okay, so first of all, here's the secret of young people that they don't know. Everybody's trying to be like you. If you want to look at any major trend in fashion, music, or anything like that, it always starts with young people. And then people like me try to buy clothes that are like cool like yours, or we try, what are you're listening to that, what, who's the artist everybody's listening to? And I'm like, I never heard of that artist, pull up, So young people have enormous power they don't realize to establish trends and to establish patterns. They don't have the levers of power, they don't have the money or the influence in large institutions, but they have the power of culture. I think this is a moment in which, the reason I like the Farrell quote is you choose what side you're on. And every single cultural change where dignity won, I'm going to argue, was created or driven by a small group of people who decided to opt out. The Quakers opted out of the violent structure of the religious wars of Europe, and they decided to create a culture that prized peacemaking. And I could go through 100 examples. You may say they haven't prevailed, but they set a counterculture, and people could look over and say, wow, what are those people doing? They solve problems peacefully. They listen to one another. So people are going to walk around and they're going to go, you know what, this student organization, there's Republicans and Democrats in it, there's black, white, gay, straight, whatever the diversity issues are, there's rich and poor, there's young and old, there's Utahns and out-of-staters, there's Brigham Young, alumni in it or whatever, but they get along. They listen to each other. They publish statements where they have 2 points of view. Wow. So my point is just like, we got to figure out how to act within the scope of power that we've got. And I would not underestimate what, I don't know if any of you have studied Margaret Mead, but her famous quote is like, never underestimate the power of 10 or 15 people to change the world. It's the only thing that ever has. So almost every great revolution in time started with 10 or 15 people, or 20 or 50 or 100. And those people felt like they were up against Goliath. They were up against a $2 trillion business, and it was hopeless, and the past dictated that they were going to lose, but they went at it anyway. And then they had an effect. Yes?
So this might be kind of like a Marxist pessimistic view, but as like a young person who's involved in politics, I really don't have any confidence in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party at all to like really make change. I think it's really over and over again, at least from me, like this is the first year I can vote. I've just seen like, I feel like they choose wealth over and over again over the public. And I was wondering if you have any recommendations of like how to be more involved and make more change, because I feel like we find
How to be more involved in politics, did you say?
In more like public policy making change, because I feel like communities find solace in like protests and getting together to like try and make change, but I really don't feel like those are effective on a big scale. Like I think the organizations have good intentions, but at the end of the day, I don't see the change that I think we need to.
Can you think of an example of an organization that has led a change that you think has been healthy or hopeful, like in your own life, in your community, in your neighborhood, in school here, or in history? Give me an example if you can, or anybody else, by the way, of any organization that you look to and they like, well, they got something done. Can't think of any.
Can't name one.
Can't think of one. Anybody else? Yeah.
I mean, we had a forum last time of like Choice Humanitarian, and they were really cool because they got a bunch of people together and like corporate responsibility to like help fund these projects outside of this.
Cool. Did you have a hand? Yeah.
Yeah, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the 60s.
Yeah. SNCC. Yeah.
Freedom Summer Project, which led to the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to sound like the person who's. Did you have an organization you wanted to name?
The ACLU, which I heard like helps make the big move with Founders in Support of Education.
The American Civil Liberties Union. So I just say it can be discouraging right now, but I don't know if you've studied or if you know the late John Lewis, who was very much involved in the civil rights movement, and he died about 4 or 5 years ago at the age late 80s, maybe even 90, I can't remember. And he said towards the end of his life, anybody who says the country hasn't changed hasn't lived my life. So it's hard sometimes to see the arc of change when you're in the middle of a period of a lot of despair. But there are organizations, the ACLU, SNCC, and others, environmental organizations, and small business organizations and entrepreneurial organizations. The whole Silicon Valley revolution was created by people who started new companies with like $20,000, $50,000, $100,000. None of the stuff we use today existed 30 years ago when I was in my 40s, not 40s, 30s, okay? None of it existed. It was all created. And you could say you don't admire it, but it's quite extraordinary what the entrepreneurial... So I just would remind you that there are so many people that want to change things. So maybe it's not Democrats and Republicans. My goal here is not to get you to join a political party or believe in political parties. I'm a little bit disillusioned with them also. But that's because I think they so often don't tell us the truth. They tell us a version of the truth that will serve their interests. And your generation in particular is like, you can see through that. That's like, I don't think that's true. That's kind of BS. You're kind of lying to me. I don't like that, right? And my generation didn't see it that way. We just saw we were Democrats or we were Republicans. But that's a good thing. Let's have some distrust where trust has not been earned and trust has not been held. And let's start some new energy on these things. So I just would say, don't despair. Maybe despair of Democrats and Republicans, but don't despair of the power you have to change things. Yes?
Yeah, so sort of an extension or maybe a different spin on the first question. I don't think violence or violent rhetoric always wins, but if the last few years have shown us anything, I think it's that violent rhetoric is extremely effective in radicalizing and mobilizing people and groups. So my question is around confronting dehumanizing and violent rhetoric. I'm not sure how much I agree with the argument or the view, but I definitely understand the sense that when facing dehumanizing rhetoric, saying, I respect your dignity, I respect your point of view, can seem very, very weak and not convincing to many people. Just like, you're just gonna sit down and take it.
Yeah.
So I guess what would you say about that, and how do you confront dehumanizing rhetoric, especially on a public platform?
Yeah.
And an extension of that, not to make it too complicated, but how do you prevent normalizing extreme positions when platforming them and maintaining, I respect your point of view, even if it's damaging?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a personal example. So I have a cousin who's in this current administration, who's the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and I've been in the field of disability pretty much my whole life. So I've worked alongside people with autism and Down syndrome and Williams syndrome, all these different kinds of challenges people face, basically my whole life. And my cousin, who I've known since I was born, and whose kids are closest of friends to my kids and who I know very well and who spend time in my house and me in theirs and so on, is doing things I think are really misguided. I think. He doesn't, I do. So when asked, I try to do what we recommend, which is stick to policies, programs, outcomes, measures. So I'll just give you a practical example, and you could go look at this. A clip on CNN, was it CNN? CNN I did a couple of weeks ago after my cousin was announcing findings that Tylenol during pregnancy leads to autism. And I know enough about those studies to be able to be intelligent, I hope, about them. At least I tried to be. And so I tried to be forceful as I could be in saying the findings that the president is citing are actually being cited incorrectly. The findings themselves do not support the position. The shaming women who are pregnant, who have fevers, which is an enormous risk to the unborn child, is exactly the wrong policy. I did not then say, and he's such a misguided fool. And his arrogance and his idiocy and his stupidity and his bullheadedness is stopping us from making progress in autism. I could have said all those things. I did not. I hope I was strong in my position. Now, some people in the room may disagree with my position, which is fine. But what I tried to do is stick to programs, policies, outcomes, measures. Not attack the person, because the attack on the person is actually a distraction from the problem. then what do we get, right? Exactly. So,
How do you respond?
well, I wasn't. I mean, you go look at the feed. I was attacked like crazy. I mean, you know, I stick to the programs, the policies, the outcomes, the measures. I mean, if what I care about is making sure that pregnant women have healthy pregnancies and that we reduce the incidence of autism, I'm going to stick to issues that help pregnant women have healthy pregnancies to the best of my knowledge and reduce the incidence or support people who have autism. Why would I waste time trying to figure out whether I don't like Donald Trump's haircut? I mean, it's a distraction from my purpose. It's not my goal. Like, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I really don't care what the president's haircut looks like or what his weight is or what his last post on social media is. It's just not my issue. My issue is people with autism. So my first point was stop destigmatizing people with autism. These people have gifts. These people have potential. These people have the capacity to contribute. These people can learn. These people can have jobs. Let's be careful that we don't. So anyway, I think it's possible to be forceful without getting into the dehumanizing game. And I think actually that we have a better chance in this very practical case, which is current right now, of reducing the chances that misguided medical advice will reach women who are pregnant and that misguided efforts to reduce the incidence of autism will focus on things that won't have any effect at all. So that's why I care about it, because if you are having a child or a brother or sister who has autism and you want to value that person, I'm with you. And if you want to reduce the chances that you'll have a baby that has autism, I'm also with you. That's all I care about. My cousin, you know, he's my cousin. I love him. I love his kids. I love his wife. And I think he's dead wrong. So that's my answer. I mean, that's just very practically where my head is today. But I don't think it's an either or. I don't think you have to dehumanize to show you care or to oppose positions that are. So go ahead. Yeah, you have a follow-up.
Sorry, we're unfortunately out of time.
Okay,
so.
one quick follow-up. Can I do that?
Okay,
You
sure,
can stop
yeah.
the feed or whatever. We don't have anywhere to go, right? No. Anyway, if you want to talk, I'm curious.
I'm just thinking about like how effective I have seen it for the Trump administration.
Yeah.
To say, if I was using you as an example, you are evil and don't care about people with autism.
Yeah.
And that's wildly effective compared to your just sticking with the facts and
Yeah.
not focusing on this dehumanizing.
Yeah. Well, what the gentleman said earlier and what you're saying, which is that you can weaponize people and make them tribally angry and feel like an affinity for a group by using contempt. You're absolutely right. And you can do the same thing by having them believe in loving their brothers and sisters. Most religions have made so many mistakes that I hesitate to even bring them up. But even this country, which has made so many mistakes, you can barely bring it up. Even this country was dedicated to the value proposition that all people are created equal. It was dedicated to something it has not fulfilled, but it was dedicated to a high aspiration that even the founders who signed that frickin' declaration knew they couldn't do. But they were unleashing, I think, in something in the world that invited people to figure out how they could wrestle with that idea. From centuries of hierarchies and oppressions, wrestle with this idea world, all people are created equal, and we're still wrestling with it. I'd rather put my guns, or I shouldn't say my guns, I'd rather put my chips on the people that want to wrestle with how we do that, rather than concede the turf to the people that think hatred and violence are the only shot. Yes, and then we'll stop. I know people, if you want to go, go. I know we're over time, so.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I really like your methodology of sticking to the policy, the effects, the impact of legislation and that sort of thing. How do you deal with an individual or an administration that fundamentally refuses to engage in conversation on those terms?
Well, I'll just give you a quick example that might be irritating, but I was at an event this morning where a person asked the same question. This was a very conservative, right-wing person who says that her primary complaint about what I'm saying is that people are not willing to engage me on terms of dignity and listening and equality. So we have a very deep perception problem about how we see other people. She was saying to me, people like me don't listen, treat her badly, violate her dignity, and lock her out. You're saying that the administration does the same thing. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm just saying the only way we stop doing that is by continuing to offer an alternative. Because you're right that people will try to lock you out and humiliate you or humiliate us or humiliate people that they disagree with, and will continue to post social media posts that make whoever opposes them look foolish. But I don't, I just don't want to join them. I want to beat them. So I think you got to create, yes, I was called such and such a name. But my interest is, I just use this example, my interest is in supporting people who are living with autism and doing everything I can to support them. And here's what I'm going to do about it. And yes, they called me a name, but here's what I'm doing. I'm working on this, I'm working on that. And I just think it's disarming to people when you do that. And they're like, whoa, that was weird. I mean, you might not get as many likes or as many retweets or whatever it is, but I think people start to pay attention. And I think at this university, frankly, you've got a shot. Natalie, you had your hand up. I'm going to give you the last word. At this university, you have a shot. For whatever reason, I'm not going to opine on that, but there's something here at this university, your president, the culture of the state, maybe the culture of the faculty, the students who are here, that is, I think, inching towards, like, we want to be different. We don't want to be that part. We don't want to be that country or that version of the country. And if I'm right, that's going to be successful if people just try a different strategy. And then I hope, 2 years from now, people from, Harvard or Yale or Michigan or California will be coming here and saying, what the hell are they doing there? It seems to be working. They have differences of opinion. They have free speech. They have open ideas. They don't dehumanize each other. People who are conservative and people who are liberal, listen. People who come from tough side of town and people who come from the easy side of town, they work together at that place. What the hell are they doing? That's what I hope. Natalie, do you want the last word?
My last word would just be, I've sat in these seats before. I spent 18 years on Utah's Capitol Hill, and people like you are up on Capitol Hill and helping to lead and counsel our elected officials. And so all of you can make a huge difference just by virtue of your education and your engagement. So that's my pitch.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's issues here that are facing the university. Your trustees are in play. Your budgets are in play. People are attacking versions of what they see at the university. Write back. Don't write back saying, Senator, you're such a jerk. You're a hopeless specimen that humanity should be ashamed of. Write back saying, this is actually who we are, Senator or Congressman or Governor or Lieutenant Governor. This is actually who we are. Please treat us with the dignity we deserve. We're trying to be excellent and do great things for ourselves and for our state and for this university. Take a look. I think that would be very powerful. Anyway, thank you all for staying over time. Thank you.